Technology is advancing by leaps and bounds. We all know this, and some of this has been enabled by some of our colleagues right here at Carnegie Mellon. Some of them are in the room even, from the School of Computer Science, from engineering, from robotics, that sort of thing. And many of us enjoy some benefits from these advances based on what they can help us do, like get to work on time when it snows. However, there is a flip side to this, which is that the rewards, the economic rewards of these advances, so far have mostly gone to those at the very top of the economic ladder, is where those advances, where those gains have gone so far. And in fact, social scientists have identified these technological advances in various kinds of technology, including artificial intelligence and machine learning, as one of the key drivers for the stark increase in inequality and income inequality that we've all experienced over the last couple decades, along with the fallout of that inequality. So in this figure, you can see that blue line is showing those at the top of the ladder. This is the top 1% of earners, and the share of all income that they've been getting over time. And we can see that going sharply up. And commensurately at the bottom 50% of earners, that's the red line, is falling over that same time period. So maybe we shouldn't be too surprised that at first these technological advances are going to be put to work for the benefit of those at the top. But here at the Block Center, we're focused on shaping what comes next by investigating emerging opportunities to put AI and other technologies to work for all of our benefits. In this talk, I'm going to focus on one of these emerging opportunities and dive into it some with you all. We're going to be looking at how AI can be put to work for some of the most vulnerable among us, for children who are facing abuse and neglect. So what's the connection between AI and this vulnerable group of children? The connection is going to come through the main way that people report suspected abuse and neglect, which is phone hotlines. So let's look into these hotlines. So who's working here in these hotlines? It tends to be social workers. These are highly trained, skilled workers who have graduate degrees. And let's think now about their bundle of tasks and how AI has some opportunities to help in this high stakes situation. So there are two main ways that AI tends to come in and interact with our tasks. One is that the AI can come in and take a task out into the AI world and fully accomplish it. So that task is removed from our bundle and our job gets reconfigured. The other way this tends to happen is that the AI comes in and sits next to us here at work, and it tries to help with a task that we are still owning. That's what I'm going to focus on here, is when the AI comes in. So let's dive in and take a close look at these tasks. I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are the person picking up the phone here at this hotline. Okay, so here we all are. We're sitting there waiting. These are high volume, these tend to be quite high volume hotlines. Phone rings, we pick up the phone. Here's the story that we hear. The caller is a neighbor. They're calling about concerns about the family next door. That family's been there for several years. That neighbor knows the kids to say hi to, friendly family. Here's what just happened that made them want to call, is that the two youngest kids came over to the caller's house, knocked on the door, and asked to come in. When the kids nobody in the family had ever been over inside the house before, and there were some things off. The kids were dressed really oddly. They were wearing layers and layers of inside clothes. And they were acting really differently than they had acted before. They were really quiet. They seemed scared. So a little while later, the dad came by and seemed to have not known where the kids were, seemed worried about that, and seemed pretty distracted. So took the kids and left. And the caller says, I'm not sure if I should be making this call to you, to this hotline, but something is not right. We need help. Okay, that's the call part of our task. Now we move to the decision-making part of our task. We have a decision to make here about whether, with this family, to screen them in to receiving protective services. Okay, so we have then made the decision that these children are likely at risk, they're likely in need of protection. We are going to engage these services, and there are further decisions to make about how urgent that need is. Okay, next 20 minutes, next hour, how urgent. Or we can decide to screen this family out. So typically that's because we've decided that this family had some other need, that the children didn't need additional protection. There's something else going on here. Like maybe this family was having a hard time paying their heating bills. Okay? And so what we can do is provide information about that program to them, meet that need, and screen them out of these protective services. So these are our decisions. Most of the time, we're highly trained experts, and we get it right? The kids who are in need of protection get that protection. The families that had other needs get routed in that direction, and it works fine. But not always. We are not going to be perfect about doing this, and this is where there starts to be an opening to ask the question, could AI come in and help? And we need to really look at what is the nature of the ways in which we're not able to do as well as we want, to understand where AI could come in and how it could or couldn't be helpful. What are the pitfalls that could happen? So let's look at the ways this could go wrong. So we could make that choice to screen the family out, and we could be wrong. So this is clearly something we want to avoid. These are children who need to be protected. We got a call that they needed help, and we did not provide that protection. That's one way it can go wrong. But it also can go wrong the other way, which is that we screen them in. And if it turns out that those children didn't need protection and we screen them in, it's not only an inefficient allocation of resources, there's also a burden for that family. Part of this is that they get investigated. This is an invasive investigation. It's often adversarial between the family and the people doing the investigation. This is always stressful for the adults who are involved, and the children tend to be confused and possibly frightened. So there are burdens with that error as well. Both directions, these are our high stakes in this situation. So we want to think here about why is it that we are not always able to reach our goal. The goal is accurate decisions and fair decisions. Very clear here what our goal is. So what are the things on the human side that are making us fall short of being able to get there? So one of the things that's true is that we get this call, we get this new information, and we have to decide how to interpret it. What would really help with that is background information. So let's say, for instance, we had some background information that the night before this family next door, there was a call to the police about a domestic disturbance. Oh, that has a strong influence on the way that we interpret this call that just came into us today. So we can expand on that in all kinds of directions. And some Child Protective Service agencies in the US have taken large steps in this direction. They've started making connections between those facilities that are set up for the call center and all kinds of additional databases. Not just police records, but school records for the kids. Are they attending school? Was this family attached to any services for homeless families? Has there been any unemployment filed for this family? On and on. So now there's this big information connection and retrieval task that's going on. The more salient information we can get, the better our decisions are going to be. we're going to get better accuracy if we can make these connections. This is a quite active area in the field of AI and machine learning. This is unstructured data in lots of different settings, and we need to pull out only the salient stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, timestamps, the order of things matters. Okay, so here are a bunch of opportunities for us to help improve accuracy. Okay, that's one way that humans could use some help here in doing a slightly better job. I also mentioned this issue of fairness. So here's our human being overwhelmed by data. So I also talked a little bit about fairness. So we also don't want certain communities of kids, right, some subpopulations of kids, to disproportionately wind up not receiving help when they needed it. And the other way around, we don't want some subpopulations of families to disproportionately bear the burden of being investigated when there was no need for that investigation. So why does this happen for humans? If the human is doing the deciding, why does this happen when the humans are committed to doing this fairly? And they are well-trained, highly trained. So again, social and behavioral science comes in and helps us understand what are the ways that people, well-intentioned, aware people, still end up exhibiting biases. And we know a lot about this, actually. So for instance, we know that people are sensitive to what's called recency bias. So let's say that we all knew when we were manning those phones that yesterday there was a case that was screened in, right? Services were sent right out. There was a big investigation and it was not needed actually, and it went really badly. We as humans are likely to respond to that by overcompensating today. It's a systematic way in which our decision-making can be off. Another thing that there's good evidence about is that many of us, all of us most likely, have some implicit bias that most of the time we don't act on. But if we're in what's called a heated emotional state, right? I have time urgency here. I just got this call from somebody who's pretty agitated and wants me to do something. All this stuff adds up to our likely being in a somewhat heated emotional state. Evidence shows we are more likely to act on our implicit biases when we're in a heated emotional state. These are the kinds of things that we can learn about ways that decision-making by humans can go wrong that maybe AI can help with. So I emphasize the maybe there. There's been an explosion of research about fairness and AI in the last couple of years. There are very interesting, groundbreaking things that are going on in that area. And we have barely scratched the surface of thinking about the implications of all of that research for actually using AI to help with ways in which humans tend to make biased decisions. There's a lot of opportunity here for us to help make fairer decisions. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is actually being used. We have a great local partner at the Black Center, the Allegheny County Department of Health and Human Services, which is way above, ahead of the curve. Thank you to some Heinz alumni for being part of getting this agency so far ahead of the curve in connecting all these databases and being one of the first places to start using AI as part of this decision-making at call centers. Some articles, New York Times, that kind of thing. So let's play this out again. Here we are. We just got off the call. We hang up the phone. I know we don't do it that way anymore, but play along. And then we hit a button, which is that I've input all of the information from that call. And what do I know about what that AI is doing over there, right? I kind of know that it's going out to all those data sources and it's pulling stuff that it thinks is salient out of those data sources, and it is stuffing all that stuff into this. Okay, it's smushing all that info into this black box. I'm sitting there pondering this phone call that I just got, right? And that black box, what's going on in there is super clever and super fast. And what it does is it spits out a risk score for me. So here we are sitting here, and we just got this one additional piece of information, which is a risk score. This is a place where a whole bunch of us in the Block Center get super interested in what happens now, right? We just got this one piece of information, and I'm a human here, sitting here with this risk score. But it's still my task. I still make the decision. Screen in or screen out? So do I go with what this black box just recommended that I do? Should I even go with it? Is that black box actually doing any better at being accurate or being fair than I would have done? Oh, we have some folks who are helping to figure out how can we learn that. Professor Alexandra Chuldachova performed one of the first fairness assessments for that tool, actually. And along the way, did some of the math to figure out what are the limits to how much fairness could be improved by algorithms. There is a lot more to be done in this area. We have some work to do here. Or let's say we do think it's an improvement, and it is better in accuracy. Fairness, where's the jury's still out. Okay, so if it is being more accurate, sometimes I'm going to overrule it. And there is so much to learn about when does that human overrule that recommendation. And is that giving us information about way that the AI needs to be improved? We need to better train that AI? Or is it giving us information that the human doesn't really trust that box over there? And maybe we tend to override it in some cases rather than others. And maybe it's because I'm sitting next to a black box. Professor Anapandata is one of the key people who's trying to reach into that box, open it up a little bit. There's this whole algorithm in there, right? That very clever algorithm. And it just gave us a risk score. Could it give us a little bit more? Could it give us a few key pieces? What about that case made the risk score be this? He's got some great methods for trying to pull some of that stuff out, but still completely unknown is if we pull that stuff out and show it to that decision maker, what do they do differently? And does it depend on how we presented it? All right, so in this one setting of children who are at risk of child abuse and neglect, there are a lot of opportunities. There is a lot of work we could do here to help make things better. And this is just one setting. There are a whole bunch of other settings, high stakes, medium stakes, low stakes. So let's get to work. We have a lot of good to do.